Nick, Germany's role has changed massively over the course of the last year of this conflict. Can you just tell us a little more about the evolution of Germany's stance on the war?
Well, Germany's entire foreign policy and defense policy has changed 180 degrees. At 5 a.m. on this day a year ago, Olaf Scholz was woken up with news of the war, and 3 days later, he made an historic speech at the Bundestag announcing that Germany was going to spend 100 billion euros extra, basically to become a military power again. And he said that this was necessary so that the rule of force would not be taking the place of the rule of law. He said it was necessary to prevent Vladimir Putin from turning the clock back to the 19th century. And he said, I'm quoting him, it was necessary to prevent warmongers like Vladimir Putin from getting their way, and that they needed to be kept in check. And this was greeted with a lot of applause in the Bundestag. The engagement of the German armed forces in supplying Ukraine at the beginning. It needs to be pointed out that before the conflict began, Germany was widely mocked for sending 5,000 helmets to help Ukraine. Over the past year, there's been a steady escalation of weaponry going in, making Germany now the biggest European Union supplier of weapons to Ukraine, overcoming a big taboo where Germany long told itself it wouldn't send in weapons into an ongoing conflict. Those weapons started with anti-tank missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, then to armored personnel carriers. Then we all remember the big debate about the Leopard 2 tanks, Germany sort of hesitating. Olaf Scholz needing to massage public opinion to get people to overcome their sort of historic taboos related to the Second World War. And now Germans are much more in favor, around 50% are in favor of sending weapons to Ukraine when it used to be just around 20% a year ago.
Right, because Germany has historically been, at least since the Second World War, a very military adverse nation. So can you tell us a little bit more about where public opinion lies today?
Well, as I said, for that particular number as regards weapons exports, around 50% of people, it's split, in favor of sending weapons into Ukraine. But if you just imagine the sort of popular mindset throughout this war, Germans having this natural hesitancy to get involved in a country where Nazi troops killed millions of Soviet soldiers. Many people were saying, we can't do this again. We were taught in school, never again. But then, this never again slogan certainly relates to, as others were pointing out, to war crimes that were ongoing, crimes against humanity that the Americans are now alleging took place in Ukraine. And I think the pictures that we all saw of Bucha, the people lying in the streets with their hands tied behind their backs, that poor woman being taken out of the maternity hospital in Mariupol, she and her baby died. All of that, I think, helped focus people's minds on what was taking place and the urgency of bringing weapons to Ukraine. The evolution was really the most remarkable in Olaf Scholz's own Social Democratic Party, because it has a long-standing tradition of Ostpolitik, of Eastern politics, of trying to change Russia through trade. And it really, really was pointed out through this invasion that all of that policy, those decades of trying to sort of cozy up to Russia and get them to change their way of dealing with their neighbors was a complete failure. So public opinion, I think, has shifted towards that. It's not massively in favor, but it has been an incredible evolution, and Germany has certainly changed its defense policy and its foreign policy to a much more forward-leaning, a much more helpful one as regards Ukraine.
France 24's Nick Spicer in Berlin. Thank you so much for your reporting.